Hello, my dears. My name is Mariana and welcome to my channel. So today we're going to part 2 of the top mistakes I see tarot readers make, but today we're talking about the mistakes you make when you're reading for others. So whether you read for other people as a professional or family and friends, this is really important to check in with what mistakes you might be making and how to fix them so you have more successful and more beautiful readings. If you haven't already, make sure to go check out part 1 of this, where I talk about the mistakes you might be making when you're reading for yourself and how to work those out. As a professional tarot reader, I'm always kind of having to check in with myself about what's working, what's not working, where I really need to be better about conducting my readings with clients. And so I have a lot of really good tips for you today. Make sure you subscribe, my friends, and go check me out on Instagram for some psycho-spiritual wisdom and witchy tips. Okay, so let's get into it. The first mistake I see people make all the time is not being clear about your rules. So there are sometimes people come to you for a reading, whether it be a client or a family member or friend, and they're gonna ask you something you don't wanna answer. When I was a beginning reader, I one time did a corporate party and I was going through lots of people and feeling really great and giving out awesome answers to questions. And then someone came and asked me when she would have a baby. And this stopped me in my tracks. Like, the role I was on, feeling great, feeling really vibing with my intuition, was just dead. Because I am not a predictive reader, so I don't use the cards to tell me time frames or what things are going to happen when in your life. And this woman was obviously hurting. But because I wasn't clear with her, I didn't establish my rules and let her know, I'm sorry, I can't answer that for you. I did my best to try to let the cards tell me maybe when you're gonna have a baby. And obviously I walked away from this feeling so bad because I didn't really know and I was out of my depth, and I realized you have to be clear about what your rules are. For me, I do not answer questions about health. I do not answer questions about timing, when things are going to happen in your life. These are just skills I don't have, so I'm not going to offer them. So it's really important for you, even if you're reading for your sister or something, to let them know, I am not going to be able to tell you when you're going to get back with your boyfriend, and you just have to accept that rule. I know it's uncomfortable sometimes, but I promise you, you're going to be really grateful you did that, because it's awful to be in the situation where you want to give someone the answer that you know you're not equipped to give. If you're a professional reader, make sure that is on your website. Make sure it's somewhere that they can find easily so that you never get into the situation with a paying client, because that is so much worse. Number 2, being clear about others' boundaries. This is one so often overlooked. A lot of advice videos like this one will tell you, make sure you're clear about your boundaries with your clients. And yes, absolutely, but also make sure your clients are clear about their boundaries with you. The reason for this is sometimes you're gonna pull cards that are gonna bring your clients to a part of their life that they don't want to get into. And it's not for you to know why. Maybe they have trauma they're really not ready to dive into. Maybe, they don't want to talk about love or their relationship because it's just not something they have space for right now. Make sure when you start a reading with somebody, you ask what's okay. Now, you don't need to run down a checklist before you start a reading of can we talk about your career? Can we talk about your finances? That's not necessary at all. But what you should do is, before you start a reading, say, look, I'm going to kind of talk about what the cards are bringing to my attention. If at any point I talk about something you don't want to talk about, let me know. You're offering a spiritual and emotional service, or you're reading for somebody that you're close to, and you have to just be okay with them saying, this is not okay. Just deal with that, honestly. Number 3, this is a big one. You're projecting. Projection is inevitable. We're always going to be projecting our emotions, our thoughts onto other people. When you're reading for somebody, and really especially when you're reading for a paid client, if you're projecting your emotional stuff onto them, you're creating a really difficult situation. It will happen that you end up getting a client or a friend comes to you asking for guidance around something that you've already dealt with. I one time did a reading for somebody who was asking about working through a relationship problem that was very similar to a relationship problem I had experienced. It took everything in me not to just tell them what I did and have that be their answer. And the cards are fluid. We can interpret them any which way. So often you might interpret the Emperor as being somebody domineering and overbearing and somebody you should definitely walk away from. But really it might mean something like finding a sense of respect and structure in their relationship. The point is, you can't just assume that the answer is the answer that you already learned in your own journey. Their journey is their journey, and you have to be able to spot when you're projecting and to shut it down immediately. It's not easy, I know. As tarot readers, we often think we know exactly what everybody needs to do, but you have to respect that their life is their life. So when you're reading for other people, if you start feeling very energized and you start feeling like, I know the advice, and your eyes lift off the cards and start focusing on what your experience is, that's probably a pretty good indication that you're just projecting your own stuff on them. Make sure that you're using the cards to give your guidance and not your own experience. Number 4, no faith in your querent. So this one is especially relevant for people who are reading for family and friends, but also happens a lot when you're reading for a client. When you know somebody, especially if you've known them to struggle or they come off to you as somebody who is young and inexperienced and doesn't really know what to do with themselves, we tend to start thinking we have to tell them what to do. This is the biggest no-no. Now, maybe you're thinking that there's somebody in your life you read for and you know for a fact they do not know how to fix themselves. I feel ya, but at the same time, your job is only to give them the guidance. You cannot make them take it. You cannot tell them, do this, do that, and your life is going to be fixed. That's not how living works. You have to make sure that you have enough faith in your client to take what they needed out of the reading and apply it to their lives. Often, what they get out of the reading is not what you hoped they were going to get. That is not for you to decide. You do not get power over their choices. You have to make sure that you have faith that the reason they choose the things they do is because they know it is best for them. You have to have faith that everybody is individuating in their own way at their own speed, and you're just here to give them what guidance you can in the moment. Number 5, not checking in and asking questions. Often when we're reading for a client, we just kind of barrel through the reading and don't stop and check in. I have learned as a professional reader that if you're not constantly checking in with your client, they're thinking things that would be really useful to know for you that they don't know how to interject. We need to make sure that we're leaving a little bit of breathing room. So pull a card, give your interpretation, and say, how does that resonate? You might have a client that's a little bit annoyed and is just expecting you to just tell them everything that they need to do, but most of the time, they're really going to appreciate that you're stopping to check in. I have found that when I check in, my readings are so much more successful because I give my client the opportunity to say, when you told me that made me think of this, and now I can kind of work through it and I can give my client a little bit more guidance, and then we actually work through real stuff. You want your readings to be a conversation rather than you just talking at them, because the truth is, you need to know what's going on with them to give them real input into what the cards are coming up to say. And that's the other half of this tip, because oftentimes I see readers being a little bit scared to ask questions. We think we need to look psychic and that the client is just expecting us to know everything about their life. And yeah, that happens a lot. Yeah. But we need to be brave enough to ask the questions we know we need to know. I one time was doing a reading for somebody and they were asking about career stuff and they were asking about having a better sense of wellness in their life. And I pulled the 7 of Swords and I was like, why are you here? And I tried to make sense of the 7 of Swords based on what my client was telling me, and it was not fitting. And finally, I just said, okay, here's what the 7 of Swords usually means. What does that make you think about? And my client then proceeded to tell me that they were in a massive lawsuit. So obviously, I was very glad I asked that question. Just by me kind of biting my pride a little bit and saying to my client, I need you to give me something to contextualize this card because I don't know why it's showing up for you, allowed us to finally get to the answer of why the card was there. Just ask the question. If a card comes up and you don't know what to do with it, ask for their input and you're probably going to get to the heart of what the card is there to say. Number 6, telling your querent what to do. Now, we talked about this a little bit before in terms of like projection, but I have found that at the end of readings, a lot of tarot readers think that they need to complete the reading by telling the querent what to do. This is not our job. When you're reading for people you know, it's a little bit easier to say, okay, I think that maybe your next step is this. But when you're reading for a client that you've never met before, you cannot tell them what to do next. This is really important not only for professional reasons. You don't want anyone coming back saying, you told me to do this and it was absolutely the wrong choice. Your boundaries have to be really clear. You're offering possibilities, not answers. Oftentimes at the end of a reading, you pull the final card and it's very clear with all the cards on the table, there is no clear answer here. And that is usually the case because there's so many things at play. The tarot's not really going to give you answers as much as it's going to give you different routes of exploration. At the end of readings, I like to give my clients action points, and this takes the place of feeling like I need to tell them what to do. I'll give them meditation strategies, I'll give them opportunity to connect more deeply with me, maybe through Patreon, I'll give them journaling tips, or maybe a little bit of insight on how they can, connect more deeply to the answer that they're looking for. Especially in a situation where a client is asking a yes or no, like, do I leave my job or not? It is really important that you do not tell them which to do. Your job is to facilitate the empowerment to make your own choices. And that's it. And maybe you should be offering some strategies or some possible solutions, but it is not your job to tell anyone what to do. Number 7, panicking that you're not giving enough. This was something I struggled with a lot when I was first beginning because I was always afraid to tell someone something wrong. And so I kept holding myself back. And then at the end of the reading, I was always like, what did I even offer them? And I would obsess about these readings afterward. I would be so afraid that I didn't give them enough, that they didn't get the value of what they invested in the reading. And then more often than not, I would get a glowing review from that person and be absolutely shocked. We always think we need to give so much to prove our worth, to prove our value. You have to keep in mind that you are a human being and that you have limitations. Tarot readers are not people who do this lightly. They are not in it for the money. Please. They are in it because they genuinely want to help people and they genuinely feel like they have a skill, they have a sense of intuition that can offer real guidance. You have to have faith in your abilities. You have to have faith in your talents. You have to have faith in your intuition. You have to be willing to let what you can offer be enough. Do not start panicking and saying,
okay, well, maybe this card could also mean this, and maybe this says that you should try this thing out, and
just confuse the whole reading by just throwing more information at the client. Take your time, go slow, be intentional, and just offer what really is coming up. As you get to, interact with clients on a more regular way, you will be able to handle the situation with a lot more grace and a lot more ease. But if you're just beginning, don't panic. You're doing everything that you can, the most you can, and that is absolutely enough. Finally, you're blocking out intuitive insights because you're afraid they're wrong. I've done this many times. I will sometimes be doing a reading and feel like, I think this is saying something here, but I won't tell my client because I'm afraid I'm very wrong. But when I do actually tell them the intuitive insight I have yet to be wrong. That sounds very pretentious. I'm sorry. Whatever, I'm a Scorpio, it's fine. The truth is, when I'm actually aligned with my intuition usually doesn't tell me wrong things. Sometimes my thinking mind will get involved and it'll try to make crazy connections. But when I'm really just sort of reading a card and saying, I feel like it means this, I don't know why, it's usually right. What happens when you block these intuitions, you suppress them, is that you learn to distrust yourself. And if you're not trusting yourself in a reading, your querent sure as hell is not going to trust you. If you are saying things like,
I don't know, but maybe this could be,
your client is going to think that you don't know what the hell you're doing. And when you get intuitions or little psychic moments, they can be very hard to trust. I totally get that. But when you get an intuition, it's really important to say, I feel like the card is telling me this. How does that resonate with you? And allow them to give you the information back that will make sense of that intuition. Do not block the magic that comes out of you. And I know a lot of tarot readers don't really consider themselves psychic or consider themselves especially intuitive, but you are. You just are. You wouldn't connect to the cards if you weren't. So you have to trust it. And in no way am I saying that you can just start throwing around psychic impulses like you should do this and this is what should happen next and this is what he's really thinking about you. That's not the point. I'll give you a little bit of an example. I one time was reading for somebody and I was getting pretty fine cards. Everything's okay. Life's looking good. And then I pulled the 4 of Cups. And I was applying this to the person's question and saying, okay, well, maybe you don't feel satisfied at work anymore. You know, the normal stuff. Then I got this intuition and it was so clear and I felt it in my body that this person was suffering profound depression. I didn't know what to do with it. I was panicking a little because I thought if I bring this to the table, I could be saying something that is really confusing for this person. It could be really emotionally difficult for them. I don't want to cause them any pain. But at the same time, the card was telling me this was really important to admit, and this was really important to hold space for in order to move forward. And so I decided to trust my intuition, and I told my client that the card can mean this and that I had this intuition that it was showing up in this way for this person, that it was telling them that they felt a profound disconnection from the soul of their life. And it was one of the most beautiful moments I've ever had in a reading because my intuition allowed me to connect with my client on this deep level. It allowed a bridge between us for my client to admit something that she had been really afraid to admit. And it also gave me the ability to be present with her wholly. Whenever you have these intuitions come up, it's really important to keep in mind the other mistakes that I mentioned. Make sure you have boundaries. Make sure you respect your client's boundaries. If they say, no thanks, don't want to go there, that's fine. But if it does happen, follow it, but follow it with integrity and open-mindedness and be as present as you can with your client. All right, so those are the 8 mistakes I see tarot readers making all the time when they're reading for other people. I hope that you got some clarity out of this, a way maybe to refine your own work, your own practice as a reader. Do not forget to subscribe. Do not forget to follow me on Instagram. If you're interested in getting deeper with me, connecting with me, having a reading with me, you can book. The link is in the description below. Or you can become a patron, and there's so many ways you can engage with me. Tarot challenges, and there's mini full moon readings, and there's new moon circles, and there's just so many goodies. So go do your readings, help your friends, guide your clients, and have a beautiful, meaningful day. Yup.